Go ahead, Philip.
Okay. Well, firstly, I would appreciate if at some point we can have more of a debate on this where we can also present the other viewpoint. I think, there's so many points that have been made that can be contested that unless I'm given another 20 minutes, it's a bit difficult to get through all of them. But I think one can put an entirely different narrative in terms of the history of Israel. Um, but the I would say just in summary, though, all conflict leads to suffering, but that doesn't mean that one necessarily blames all of that suffering or the conflict on the one side. But I would also argue in terms of the need to look at the Bible. And the one argument that was raised by Heidi was that this is an anti-Semitic end goal. I'm a Jew myself. I believe Jesus is the Messiah, and I would argue that the king of the Swana, which I think is Moss's indigenous background, his comment when presented with the gospel for the first time was, "Why did your grandfather not come and tell my grandfather about this before?" Because if it is true, then that is something that everybody needs to hear. And I think it's the same for any ethnic group, the same gospel. It's not different for Jewish people. It's just that expectation there. So I don't believe you can argue that that is anti-Semitic at all. But then in terms of the just also the definition of Zionism, Zion is Jerusalem. So Zionism is the belief that the Jews will return to Jerusalem. And I think that that is implied by Jesus when he said to the people of Jerusalem, "You will not see me again until you say, 'Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord.'" And he also said that Jerusalem would be trampled until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. So he was essentially saying there would be a period of time when Zion, Jerusalem, would go into exile, and that would come to an end, and that they would welcome him on his return. So he's predicting that. Then one has in the New Testament in Romans 11 the prediction of the spiritual restoration of the Jewish people, the return to Jesus as Messiah. But I think the part, and I think all Christians believe that, but the part which is contested is whether that would include a national restoration to a political restoration. And I would argue that if one looks at just about every Old Testament prophet predicts the exile and then the return of the Jewish people. But and when they do that, they generally put multiple prophecies together, some of them spiritual, some of them in terms of the prosperity of the land, and some of them political. And so I think that the expectation of the readers who are familiar with the Old Testament would be that if the one happens, as in the spiritual restoration, then the other would also happen. So I'd be happy to go into much more detail if I was allowed more time, but that would be my summary response.
Thanks. Thanks,